There was a time in my life where my mother was my caretaker. My mom is a very quiet person, but she has a sneaky, dry, fun sense of humor and can almost be goofy. You have to get to know my mom before you really get to know her. She loved her husband, she loved all of us children, and she was always there for the skinned knees, the bruised egos, all of those kinds of things. She was the best mother and still is the best mother in the world. She was the glue that held the family together when Dad was at work. She worked full-time herself as a nurse in a hospital setting, and then years later she went to a private practice, and then she went to the nursing home where she is now currently living full-time. About 14 years ago, Tracy and I were figuring out that we were running out of space in our little house. We had a little 1,100-foot square foot house, and we had 2 kids, and then Sarah Lynn was born, and we were running out of space. So we had been praying and talking about buying the house that I grew up in, because my mom has been widowed for well over 20 years. And she had been wanting us to come over there anyway and build her a little spot on the back and then be with her, because, you know, she was all alone. And the Lord worked it out just perfectly for us to be able to do that. I got a job with just enough of a raise to help us build the apartment on the back. And we were there for, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years, and then started noticing that Mom was forgetting little things here and there, and she would tell you the same story over and over. She would ask the same questions over and over. You know, where is Andrew? Well, he's at school. Okay. What's for dinner tonight? Well, steak. Well, where's Andrew? Well, those kinds of things. And she got tested and found out that she had a disorder called vascular dementia. It results from many strokes that she probably didn't even know she was having. And things began to gradually get worse. She got to where she would forget where she was going. She might think she was going to pick up her medication, and she would end up at the bank, or she might think she's going to the grocery store, and she would end up at church, and it would not even be Sunday, and those kinds of things. And that gradually progressed over several years until she fell a couple of years ago, broke ribs, went into the hospital. She recovered, went through rehab. Then she had 24-hour caregivers, paid caregivers in the morning, me and my sisters in the afternoon and evenings. And then she fell again. She wound up in full-time long-term care, which is where she is now. I never thought that her mind would go to the extent of where she is now. What it did for me is it taught me a lot about myself. I always considered myself a very patient person, and people would tell me, "Oh, you're a very patient person. Oh, you're a very humble person." And this taught me that I had a long way to go. Kind of like Paul, now I realize I'm the chief of sinners. And this whole situation is not about me. It's not that God caused her to have this problem so that he could teach me something. But we live in a fallen world. This happened to her, and me and my sisters and my family happened to be living it with her. And so it did teach me patience. It taught me to how much I really loved my mom, and I was very proud of my wife and my kids. I mean, they understood that, you know, it's time to pull up the bootstraps and go to battle. I love them so much more for that. And my sisters as well, they did the same thing. They said, you know, we've got to do this. It's not fun, it's not easy, and it breaks our heart. But it caused me and my mother to develop even a more closer relationship. But the hardest part, I think, is seeing the parent become like the child. And I was always used to my mom being there as my mom, and now she almost sees me as the parent. And that's tough. The comfort I have in this situation is knowing that my mom knows Jesus. My mother was the first person who taught me about having a quiet time. I can trace that back to my mother. There are other traits my dad taught me, but that was one thing I can say my mom taught me was, you need to read your scripture every day. And so knowing that my mother is going to leave this broken shell and spend eternity with Jesus is the only comfort that I can truly say that I have through this. And I know that God restores things in His way and His timing, but the truth promises of the gospel are that everybody who trusts in Him, even if they have to go through a broken body, a broken relationship, they have to go through whatever other brokenness that is in their life. When you fall before Him and you ask Him and you try Him, He will answer your call. And He will give you that assurance that even though things may not work out as you want them to in this life, there is a total restoration. And I believe that with all my heart, and that's what gives me the peace and the motivation to go on day by day.